Hey, everybody. Hope that everybody's doing well. Well, this is it, the last video workshop. And of course, the goal here is to give us some strategies to help us develop our WD3s. I'm going to talk in particular about subclaims, central claim, and introductions. As usual, those are the sort of core aspects of these essays in terms of analysis and argument. And so I do hope that this will be useful. One other thing I want to mention before I get right to it, just in the spirit of time, is that I'll also be posting to the course documents module in Canvas on the modules page. There's a course documents module, which hopefully you know that by now. I will be posting example analysis paragraphs of the 3 different paragraphs that I'm going to talk about: critique, critique and proposal, and then proposal. So we'll get more details on those in just a minute. And without further ado, let me share my screen and let's get started. Always takes me a second. I apologize. Okay, so I wanted to start by just covering sort of 3 sort of key things to remember in developing our WD3 or even revising our WD3 to develop our final draft of the essay. One thing is that we want to be sure to have a sense of context in our introduction about what problems, sorry, I have a double what there, what problems or limitations there are in your field of interest, and provide a little bit of context, a sense of what possibilities changes could take place to make the field or issue better. Remember, and I'll get to this, but in some cases, it could be that the changes, right, the new vision could be something that's already underway. For example, like the fact that police body cams, let's say. Some departments use them, but maybe we can make them more widespread, making sure that all departments, police departments, are required to use them. And some of them I know like only activate during they're either activated by the police officer themselves, or they're activated, I think, only during when they're going into a call or whatever. Maybe it's better to have them on 24/7, right? Or for the entire shift. So in other words, that it's not that you have to be coming up with these brand new ideas that nobody's even thought of. You could just be talking about like, look, there's some good things happening that are enhancing the field or sort of improving some of the problems in relation to a social issue, but we need to sort of expand upon these. So having that context of not just like what's the current status with the field and what are some of the problems, if I can bring in research for that, all the better, right? Or and then also a little bit of a sense of what could be different and how could that be better. So those 2 aspects of context we want to work towards having in my introduction. We want to use outside quotes. As you know, we need to have 2 outside quotes from 2 outside sources. One of them needs to be a scholarly source, but that's not the only support we need, right? We're not writing, again, a book report, if you will, or a report on the field. We're not writing an exposition. We're writing an argumentative analysis. So I am going to want specific evidence. And then, of course, in some situations where maybe I'm proposing a new idea or proposing changes, I can use hypothetical examples, right? So let's say I'm proposing this hypothetical idea for the police cams to be on 24/7. Well, then, sorry, when checking something, making sure the transcription's happening. Let's say I'm proposing an idea for the police cams to be on 24/7. I can sort of hypothetically analyze like this way, if the cameras are on 24/7, these kind of sudden instances everything will be recorded. Not to mention that it'll also give police officers a little bit of more pressure to abide by sort of ethical standards and not abuse power at any moment, right? So I'm kind of providing hypothetical examples in some cases where I'm proposing changes or a new vision. The third thing to keep in mind is to overview and description versus analysis and argumentation. Like I said, we're not just providing exposition. I'm not just explaining what's happening in a particular field, but I'm showing the distinct effect and consequence of these drawbacks and then the possible changes. And this is really where the subclaims come into play. It's also part of our central claim, as we'll see. But the idea is that I'm not just writing a report on the field and here's the problems and here's some of the advances. I'm actually sort of saying like these problems or these limitations or drawbacks are leading to real issues or leading to real problems. And then also proposing ideas in terms of that have certain effects and consequences that to possibly solve those problems. Okay, so let's try and get a little bit more concrete here and specific. So the overview of the task, as we know, if we look at the M3 overview, our task is to create a new vision of a selected field of interest through an analysis of its current status, problems, and possibilities, and argue how this vision benefits a specific social issue and or enhances the field itself, right? So the analysis here is going to be about the current status of the field is leading to certain problems and or possibilities to fix those problems, right? So you'll see we could have a first analysis paragraph that's talking just about the problems in the field and the effect and consequences of what those problems are creating and leading to. But my other analysis paragraphs need to be proposing possibilities to fix those problems or even possibilities to enhance the field or whatever it might be. The argument here, obviously, is that we can see the back half of the statement, how this new vision enhances the field and or has a significance for a social issue. The reason I have that and or there is because you might just be making an argument about how the theater, let's say I'm writing about the field of theater, how it can be more immersive and engaging and more sort of really sort of be more gripping for audiences. And therefore, but maybe I'm writing about the theater, and we saw that in Nick's invention post, right, thinking about the theater in terms of the issue of diversity and equality and gender equality. So in that case, Nick will be writing about the social issue of sort of race and gender equality, but we don't have to do that. We could also just write about enhancing the field itself, right? Making the field better. So that's why the and or is there. Now with analysis, I want to focus first on analysis, and of course, subclaims are what drive our analysis, right? And as we know, subclaims always have two things, an element and an analytical point. The element is either going to be a specific innovation or improvement that can enhance the field, or the element's going to be a specific source of a problem in the field, excuse me. So what's the difference? Well, I mean, the differences are obviously an innovation versus the source of a problem, but we'll take a look at when are we going to use those different things. The analytical point should have a sense of effect and a sense of consequence. So the effect is the immediate effect of the innovation or the problem. The consequence is the larger impact of that innovation or problem on the field or on the social issue, right? So that's generally speaking what the subclaims are going to do. We want a subclaim at the start of each of our analysis paragraphs. Now, one of the things that you hopefully noticed in the M3 overview is that there's three kinds of paragraphs that we can think about in developing our analysis in these essays, right? The first kind is a critique, the second is a critique and proposal, and the third is a proposal. So I want to sort of go into a little bit more detail about what the differences are here and how these differences correspond to the different kinds of subclaims we would want to use for those paragraphs. So a critique paragraph analyzes the most significant problem or limitations in a field. And you see I put an asterisk there. The reason I put an asterisk there is because if we're going to use just a critique only analysis paragraph, it should be our first analysis paragraph, meaning our first paragraph after the introduction and central claim. And it should be the only one. I should only use one. Since we're writing roughly a 3.5, 4-page paper, most likely I'm going to have somewhere around 3 or 4 analysis paragraphs, right? The job of this paper is not just to critique a problem in a field. The job is to re-envision it and propose ideas or propose innovations that are helping to solve some problems in that field or enhance it or some of the, or make it more effective. So if I'm going to use a critique analysis paragraph, It should be my first analysis paragraph, and it should be only one. With the subclaim and a critique and analysis paragraph, right? You want the element, in this case, it'd be the specific source or sources of the major problems in the field, right? So, let's say I'm thinking about the field of, let's say I'm thinking about mental health in elementary school education, right? And I'm going to have a first paragraph that just, I'm going to say the source of the element of my subclaim for that paragraph would be that it's just there is a lack of resources as well as a lack of structured programming within elementary schools that is perpetuating ignorance around mental health issues, as well as disempowering young elementary school kids in terms of self-care. Okay, so there I have kind of lack of resources and a lack of sort of structured programming is the element, and then I have a sense of the effect and consequence of what's that leading to. And that would be my first analysis paragraph, in that it would be just a critique. Now, when it comes to critique and proposal analyzes a significant problem and then proposes a solution to that problem. So in this case, as you can tell, a critique and proposal just combines the critique and proposal paragraphs, but you're doing it in one paragraph. It's more concise. So in this case, I'm going to have the element and the analytical point from the critique, but then I'm going to sort of also connect that to an element and analytical point of the proposal. So yes, I'm going to talk about a specific problem. So, and then an analytical point about what that source of that problem is leading to. And then I'm also going to have a sense of I'm going to have a sense of a specific innovation that ideally is going to solve that problem. Sorry, the doorbell rang and my dog goes a little crazy when the doorbell rings. So I have two elements and two analytical points in the subclaim. So the first element's the problem, source, and then analytical points about the effect and consequence of that problem. The second element's going to be the specific innovation or improvement. I should say specific innovation or improvement, and then the effect and consequence of that innovation or improvement. So it's sort of two subclaims in one in many ways, because I'm both critiquing and proposing in that paragraph. We'll look at examples and hopefully that'll make a little bit more sense. Finally, with the proposal paragraph, that's where I'm proposing an innovation or improvement into the field, and then I analyze that improvement or innovation's possible impact. So here the element is the specific innovation or improvement, not of improvement, or improvement, and the analytical point is the effect and consequence of innovation or improvement. Okay, so let's try and get a little bit more grounded with some examples on these things. So in terms of a critique paragraph, the subclaim would look, like I said, it would have an element, have an analytical point. The element in this case is the specific cause of a problem, and the analytical point is the effect and consequence of that problem. So let's say I want to talk about the problem of racial bias or racism in police departments. So I start off with just a general idea: current policing is leading to racism. Okay, but notice how this is very general as far as a subclaim is concerned. So one of the first things I want to do whenever I'm dealing with a subclaim, trying to write a strong subclaim, is I want to specify the element. So what is the specific cause? So I'm going to try and be more specific. Limited police training, I feel, is the main problem that is leading to racism. So there I'll specify the element. The subclaim's a little bit stronger. It's a little more specific. It's a little clearer. But I also want to make sure I specify the effect, right? So what is the effect of the limited police training? Limited police training is leading to racial bias in policing that destroys trust in cops. Okay, now I'm starting to get a little bit more of a sense of the specific effect that the element is having. Finally, I want to specify the consequence here as well. So limited police training is leading to racial bias in policing that destroys trust in cops and disconnects police from the very communities they have sworn to serve and protect. So now I got a much more fully developed subclaim for this critique paragraph. Obviously, I feel like limited police training is really the source of most of the problems with racial bias. So that's going to be my first analysis paragraph, and that's the subclaim. and I'll have to dive into the details of that. But I want to make sure I specify the element, specify the effect, specify the consequences, the consequence, and this is going to be the first sentence or two at the start of that critique analysis paragraph. Okay, so now let's take a look at a proposal paragraph, subclaim for a proposal paragraph. Here, the element's going to be a specific innovation or improvement within the field. The analytical point is the effect and consequence of that innovation or improvement. So let's say I want to write about learning kits. I'm thinking about education, right? Elementary school education. So learning kits can teach kids new skills. So I can make that element a little bit more specific. The widespread and regular use of STEM learning kits, okay? So there's already learning kits and they're being used in schools, but I feel like it's very limited right now. In the research I did, I feel like they should be used a lot more, particularly learning kits that are STEM based, right? Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and that they should be used more regularly because it gives students more hands-on experience. It really sort of empowers them and gives them authority over their own learning, right? Okay, well, let's specify the effect here. The widespread and regular use of STEM learning kits can teach elementary schools kids technical skills. Okay, well, what's the consequence of that? Why is that important? The widespread and regular use of STEM learning kits can teach elementary school kids the technical skills necessary for the jobs of the future. I have this sense of consequence of how this sort of effect will translate to a real consequence within the larger world, if you will. So that's for a proposal analysis paragraph. Finally, we'll take a look at the critique and proposal. And this was the one, like I said, that's kind of two subclaims in one, because I'm both analyzing a problem, cause of a problem, and the effect and consequence of that problem. And then I'm also, on top of that, talking about a improvement or an innovation that also leads to an effect and consequence that deals with that problem, right? So let's take a look at what this might look like. So first, I want to specify the element, effect, and consequence of the problem. So the instability of climate change heightens the conditions for destructive drought and flooding, allowing crop diseases to flourish and leading to substantial food losses globally. So there I have a specific element, the instability of climate change, right? Leads to a certain effect, heightens conditions for destructive drought and flooding and allowing crop diseases to flourish. And the consequences of this is it leads to substantial food losses globally. Now I want to specify the element, effect, and consequence of the solution. However, the use of bacteriophages to prevent plants from contamination would mean the loss of less produce and provide a more reliable yield at harvest in spite of extreme conditions. So notice how I have that kind of two-layered process, right? Or six-layered process if you want to think about, element, element, effect, consequence, element, effect, consequence. That way I'm integrating both. I'm talking about probably analyzing this problem of what climate change does in the first half of that support paragraph, analysis paragraph. And then the second half of it, I'm talking about this use of bacteriophages. So why would you use a critique and proposal paragraph? Instead of, because in many ways, maybe I don't have a ton of evidence or stuff I want to talk about in terms of bacteriophages. So I'm going to combine it both, the problem and the solution, into one. It sort of keeps them together. To my mind, it's a little more concise, right? But I could just write a critique paragraph if I wanted to do that for the very first analysis paragraph, or I could just write a proposal paragraph or a series of proposal paragraphs. Okay, hope that makes sense. Let's move on to bring back the overview of the task, and I want to talk about central claim here. So analysis is all based around subclaims, right? We just went through that. Argument, of course, is based around central claim. So the focus of the paper: issue, impact, consequence, significance. These, in the case of this essay, these are the things I want to think about in terms of developing in my central claim statement, which of course, in the case of these relatively short essays, should come at the end of your introduction, should be the last few sentences of your introduction. The focus is your specific field of interest, right? The issue is either the specific social issue. So let's just go back to Nick's example of thinking about the theater. So the specific field of interest is the theater. The specific social issue in this case was equality, racial and gender equality in the theater. The impact, the overall problem or possibility within the field, what is happening right now with racial and gender inequality in the theater is that it's leading to a theater that is much less diverse, and it's also sort of depriving us of a much wider variety of talent, and it's leading to oppression and discrimination. What's the consequences? Consequences about what overall changes could lead to for that issue or field. How could it? What is the importance of it becoming better, and the larger significance of those changes for the issue or field, right? So that's the larger significance of that, the central claim. So again, you don't have to be dealing with a particular, controversial social issue. If you want to just talk about how the field could be better, you could do that. Again, if you take a look at the paragraph examples in the course documents, the critique and proposal, and then the proposal, you'll see that there's one that's talking about video game soundtracks and how to improve the development and design and creation of video game soundtracks. It's not addressing any real social issue. It's talking more about how that field of video game soundtrack development can be better, can be stronger. So that's an example to look at if you're thinking of, like, not really necessarily connecting to some larger controversial social issue, but thinking about how a particular field can just be enhanced. Okay, so let's take a look at an example of a central claim statement here. Central claim, focus and issue, impact, consequence, significance. So let's say I'm interested in writing about physical therapy field, right? So I want to talk about innovations in physical therapy can expand access to patients who are normally excluded from needed treatment, right? So here I have the focus, which is the physical therapy field. We have this issue of exclusion, that people tend to be either not are bored with physical therapy, or don't have the ability there, or don't have the insurance. They don't have the money. So, and then I want to connect that to a sense of impact, which is access. Now, this increased access, so notice how I'm following through with that, will engage patients more fully and effectively. So now I'm going from the impact to the consequence, okay? And then what's the larger significance of that? That will provide equal opportunity for treatment regardless of ability or class status. Now, of course, this central claim is only going to make sense fully in terms of me setting up these issues in the introduction about these problems of exclusion, this problem of class status, this problem of ability, this problem of engagement, patients more fully, and that it will engage patients more fully and effectively, the effectiveness of physical therapy right now, this lack of equal opportunity for physical therapy. So I'm going to want to set up all those ideas in order to strengthen, that's the context that I want in the introduction, that'll then therefore set up my central claim statement and my argument. Let's take a look one last time at intro, organization, focus and issue, context, the current status and problem. Can bring in an outside quote to help me establish that. And then the secondary context, new possibilities and the benefits, outside quote, if I would like, that's why there's an asterisk, to help me establish that. And then the central claim statement. You're going to see things are color coded here. So we start off with the current status, right? Actually, the new possibilities in the field. The emerging innovations of Nintendo Wii and virtual reality consoles, have been slowly transforming the video game industry for the past few years. Now, these technologies are joining other industries beyond the gaming world, such as healthcare, as fundamental tools. Between 2011 and 2017, International Journal of Rehab researchers described findings from their analysis of 126 studies concerning a total of 4,242 patients, all of which focused on the use of commercially available gaming systems as a component of rehab. The Nintendo Wii and the latest virtual reality system, Karen, are being used by all ages to improve attention and concentration skills, to keep brains active for educational purposes, and most important, to enhance physical performance. Physical therapists utilize these popular systems of interactive technology to help patients recovering from traumatic injuries or strokes, patients with disabilities, and the elderly strengthen their sense of mobility. So here I have this kind of current status, a sense of some of the problems going on, and some of the possible benefits. So the introduction continues. Often the disadvantages of insurance costs or motivation have prevented patients from receiving the required treatment they need. So here I have that stronger sense of that problem. About 44 million Americans do not have health insurance, and another 38 million have inadequate health insurance, which often leads people to postpone necessary care. The collaboration of easy access, visual entertainment, and remarkable physical benefits with these technologies provides all patients the chance to receive necessary treatment at their own convenience, even in spite of physical or financial limitations. So now I have that whole picture. I've set up all that context about the problem, context about the benefits that could be reaped from these innovations of virtual reality and gaming, or the gamification of physical rehab. So then I get the central claim: focus and issue. Today's technological trends of virtual reality and video games and physical therapy expands access to patients who are normally excluded from treatment. There's the impact. This increased access does what? What's the consequence? Engages patients more fully and effectively to do what? To provide equal opportunity for treatment, regardless of ability or class status. Then I have that larger significance. So I go from focus, issue, impact, consequence to the larger significance. Okay, I think that's about it. Just wanted to put up the whole introduction, central claim here, so you can see how it's really, this is why I talk about the introduction. It's one of, I think, the harder paragraphs to write, because I really kind of need to know what my central claim is. I often, will either write kind of just a basic introduction, start to do my analysis, and then I come back to the introduction and detail it further once I understand more what I'm trying to argue and what I'm trying to say. Once I have a better understanding of what the current status is, what the problems are, and what the possible benefits are in my particular field. So that will allow me to develop the context much more effectively, so that I set up this a much stronger central claim at the end of that introduction. Okay, I'm going to bounce out and try to sorry, takes me a moment to get out of that. So I hope that's useful. Obviously, you could go back and review these things. We have all those worksheets in the course documents module: the central claims, the subclaims, the analysis organization, as well as I have now added those example paragraphs of critique and proposal, and so you can take a look at those and get a sense of examples of analyses that other students have done in a similar assignment. Good to be here, great to work with everybody, and I'm not going to sort of give any kind of sappy goodbye, but it's honestly a pleasure to see the sort of critical thinking, the ideas, the narratives, both the narratives that you wrote as well as the narratives that we analyzed, and just to see all these different insights and the hard work and the effort and the conversation, particularly in an online class, is something that I was really impressed by with this group. And it takes a little extra, in my opinion, for an online class to really kind of spark. And there can be lulls in the semester. There can be moments where, especially during these hard times, where we can all hit a wall. And I just felt like the energy and the motivation, maybe it's just on my side, but the energy and the thinking and the conversation was maintained really well throughout. And I thank you for that. It's been a real pleasure to do what I can to try and help us. And I appreciate you guys helping me with new ideas, insights, and critical thinking, and the energy of conversation. So good luck with this final written essay. And then, of course, we have the video essay as well ahead. All right. If I don't talk to you soon or see you soon, I wish you all the best in the future. And here's to a good last couple of weeks to finish out the semester strong. Take care.